Hi all, this is Nelly, Ordinary People, Saintly Souls, and I continue to read from the visions of Maria Valtorta and what she saw about Jesus' trial and his execution. So after Caiaphas and the remaining members of the Jewish council have decided that Jesus should be put to death, they will take him to the house of Pontius Pilate. And on purpose, they take the long road. They go through the markets and the stables, and they really make sure that there are as many as possible who can insult him. And all the hostels, by the way, she says, are full because it's Passover. We've talked about that. The temple is full because people have come to Jerusalem for the Passover. And so the crowds keep howling and keep growing, and they keep throwing dirt at him and hitting him and throwing pebbles and stones and pieces of wood at him and whatever they can lay their hands on. But at one point, Jesus hears a voice in the crowd, and it says, "Jesus, it's Elias, the shepherd." And Elias is trying to make his way to where Jesus is and shouts, "Master." Now Elias was one of the shepherds who was there at the time of Jesus' birth when the angels brought the good news of the birth. And later on, during Jesus' ministry, they meet up again. And Jesus has a chance to talk to him for a minute and says, "Go, my mother, I bless you." And so they keep going, and the crowd becomes more and more, let's say, emboldened to hit him and to harm him. And at one point, there rushes in a Roman man on a horse, a very beautiful horse. And that is someone who we read about once in the book of Acts, the 13th chapter, the first verse, Manaen. And Manaen is a very high-placed official in the household of Herod. He is actually his foster brother. And Jesus has healed Manaen's wife. And so he became friends with Jesus, and he believes in Jesus. And so now, in his capacity as a high-placed Roman, he tries to protect Jesus as much as he can. So he gallops into the crowd and shouts, "Back off! How dare you disturb Herod's, the Tetrarch's rest?" But that's, of course, only an excuse to justify his intervention and attempt to reach Jesus. "This man, let me see him. Stand aside, or I will call the guards." And so this is what drives the people away. And at one point, he hears another cry of a woman who cries, "Jesus, my Savior, my life, oh my eternal, give my life for his." And Jesus turns around and sees from one of the beautiful Roman houses, he sees Joanna of Cusa, and you write that Chuza, and he once healed Joanna. She was dying and he healed her. And you will find her mentioned in Luke, the 8th chapter, the 3rd verse, and in Luke, the 24th chapter, the 10th verse. And so Joanna sees the procession come by, and later on she comes down and she will join the women at the cross. But at the same time, the crowd keeps shouting, "Death, death to the blasphemer, the corrupter, the devil, death to his friends." And they keep throwing stones. So then they come at the house of Pontius Pilate, and as we can read in the Bible, the temple leaders refuse to go in, although he invites them, because they say that that will make them impure. But they shout, "He is liable to death according to our law." And then comes a centurion, and he's called Longinus, and we will see him many times. And you can find him mentioned in the Gospel of John, the 19th chapter, the verse 34, when he pierces Jesus' side after Jesus dies and is taken from the cross. Longinus is also trying to protect Jesus and admires him very much, but in his position as the leader of the people who have to execute Jesus, he can only be as respectful and helpful and mild as possible. So then so he tries to also push back the crowd. And then Jesus comes before Pontius Pilate. Now Pontius Pilate, Moses in, it's early morning. He is woken up from his sleep. And he said, let his accusers come. And they don't want to come because they say that will contaminate us. So then, again, he asks them for their charge. And then he says to them, well, why don't you take him and judge him according to your laws? And they say, we are not allowed to sentence someone to death. Only Rome can do that. And then Pontius Pilate wants to talk to Jesus. And he says, are you the king of the Jews? And then Jesus answers, after a little bit to and fro, my kingdom does not come from this world. If it were a kingdom of this world, my ministers and my soldiers would have fought to prevent the Jews from arresting me. But my kingdom is not of this earth, and you know that I do not seek power. And Pontius Pilate says, yeah, I know, I've been told, but you do not deny that you are a king? Jesus says, you assert it. I am a king. That is why I came into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Those who are on the side of the truth listen to my voice. And this really impresses Pontius Pilate. He said, what is the truth? Are you a philosopher? It does not serve when facing death. Socrates died just the same. And Jesus said, but it served him in his lifetime to live honestly and also to die well and to enter into the other life without being called the traitor of civic virtues. By Jove, Pilate looks at him for some moments full of admiration. And then he resumes his skeptical sarcasm. And he says to the Jews, to Jewish leaders, I find no fault in him. And then he doesn't quite know what to do with Jesus. And he says, okay, take him to Herod to be judged, because he is the subject of Herod. And so then off they go to the palace of Herod. And I will talk about that in the next video. This was Nelly for Ordinary People, Saintly Souls. See you later.